right, welcome back to the Hunt Harvest Health Podcast. I am your host, Dr. Hillary Lampers. Today we are on day 5. We finally made it to day 5 of our GI health series. Hopefully you've enjoyed this. You're getting some useful information out of it. Today we are going to finish up with the colon, the microbiome, and what's called the Reintroduce phase of our 4R's gut restoration program. But first, I want to talk to you about, of course, Healthy Nutrition, our podcast sponsor. Now, the gut restoration program, like I've said every day, is available at our website. We've had it on there for years. Thousands of people have downloaded it. I use it with most of my patients, I feel like, especially when they're coming on with GI issues. And it's not really that hard to do. It's just a glorified elimination diet, really. And so we're just removing the offenders. We're having you eat nutrient-dense foods. It's not a diet. It's just incorporating nutrient-dense foods. And then if you want to, you can include the supplements that we have there at our website at stealthynutrition.com. Now, the fourth part of the gut restoration program, we do use a probiotic. Now, the probiotic is called the Immune Support Probiotic, and it is actually it's a group of soil-based strains. The reason that we use soil-based is, number one, it's dairy-free. We do understand that a lot of people are dairy intolerant and dairy-free, but we also realize that a lot of these microbes that our gut needs come from the soil, which our planet needs in order to be healthy. So the Immune Support Probiotic is taken usually in the morning and at night during this program. Now, if you take it, you just take the probiotic and you're not going to do the program, you can take, usually I tell patients, or I would do it myself, I would say take one before bed at night. The nice part about taking your probiotics at night is that you're not eating, it's re-inoculating the gut, it may help with a bowel movement in the morning, etc. But that's how I would mainly tell patients to take it. But during the gut restoration program, we're beefing you up a little bit. And so you're going to be taking more during that. And it does require 2 bottles of the Immune Support Probiotic for the whole program. You can again find these products along with the Immune Support Probiotic at Stealthy Nutrition. Use the code STAYHEALTHY for 10% off your first and all future products. Okay, let's get into everything we got to talk about today. These series are so much fun for me to do. I learn so much as I'm going through it myself. You know, I have to do a little research and re-educate myself with anatomy and physiology. And so I get a lot out of these too. I also don't lean too heavy on making this a big doctor podcast. I want to make this good for everyday lay people who may not understand anatomy and physiology, but hopefully that you'll be able to understand the importance of these systems, how they play into your life, and that in turn will help you make better decisions to improve your long-term health. So let's get started. We'll just talk about the reintroduction phase itself. Now, the reintroduction or the reinoculate phase focuses on restoring and maintaining the healthy balance of beneficial bacteria in the gut microbiome. It also includes the reintroduction of foods after you've done like the elimination diet or the gut restoration, you've eliminated foods. And what it's doing is it's helping you to reintroduce those foods. And we'll get to that in a minute. But let's talk a little bit about the microbiome. Now, I think before we talk about the microbiome, we need to talk about the anatomy, right? So where is the microbiome housed and what is the anatomy that we have? And that would obviously be in the colon. And so let's talk about the colon first. Now, the colon is known as the large intestine. It's the final part of the digestive system. It plays several essential roles really in maintaining your overall health. And besides housing the microbiome, it helps obviously in producing waste and elimination of waste. It's integral for digestion, hydration, nutrient absorption, and immune system function. So you have 5 different parts of your colon, and is about 5 to 6 feet long. Ileocecal valve, which is on the lower right side, right above your right like hip bone, if you were thinking about anatomy. And then you have, that's the cecum. Then you have ascending colon, which comes up in the front of your body under your right rib cage. You've got the transverse colon, which crosses across, kind of around where the pancreas, gallbladder, that area is, come comes across. And then you have the descending colon, which goes down, and then the sigmoid, which means S-shaped, and that goes down to the rectum and anus. And I think we all know what happens there. So that's the anatomy of the colon. Now, the functions of the colon, number one is water and electrolyte absorption. So the colon absorbs water, it absorbs potassium, sodium, and other electrolytes from your food, and helps to maintain proper hydration and electrolyte balance. If you are dehydrated, the stool will go all the way through the small intestine, and then it will hit the colon, and the colon will signal, is this person dehydrated? And if you are dehydrated, it will pull water from your stool. So this is why one of the first things we tell people who have chronic constipation is that you need to make sure you're hydrated, because if you're dehydrated, your colon is going to try to pull water back into the body from the stool. And that will be a problem. You will not have enough water to be in the stool to eliminate it. Another thing to think about is that the colon will also eliminate water, and it will say, okay, we have an infection or we have something going on. We need to get rid of it. And you will have water flowing into the colon. And this is like diarrhea. Right? So both the water in and the water out. It also obviously does formation and storage of stool, and that's how we get rid of waste. It houses the microbiome, and this is really home to trillions of bacteria and other microorganisms. So the microbes play a critical role in a few areas. One, they digest undigested fibers, and so they produce what's called short-chain fatty acids. One example would be butyrate. Butyrate helps to nourish the colon cells and reduce inflammation. We do know that people who make less butyrate might have higher risk of colon cancer because it's protective. So that's one thing that microbes do. The microbes do vitamin production as well, synthesizing vitamins like K and B vitamins. And they also help with immune system support by defending against harmful pathogens. All right, another function of the colon is immune function. About 70% of the immune system resides in the gut. Much of it is concentrated in the colon. Now, that's interesting because we talked about the small intestine. Both the small intestine and the colon are high concentrators of your immune system. Now, the colon's lining contains immune cells that help prevent infections and also regulate inflammation in the body. The colon is a digestive waste processor, so it breaks down any remaining nutrients that you have in the stool, gases or compounds, through microbial fermentation. And then it produces gases like methane, hydrogen, carbon dioxide as byproducts, etc. So it's helping you with waste processing. And then it does help maintain pH balance. So those short chain fatty acids that I talked about before, like the butyrate, they help maintain an optimal pH in the colon, which supports your overall health. Now, just a few obvious reasons of why the colon is important to us is it does help supporting digestion, hydration, your microbiome. It's critical for preventing digestive disorders and infections. The gut-brain axis plays into this, and so the colon and the microbiome are central to the gut-brain axis. And this is influencing your mental health. It's influencing your mood. It's influencing your cognitive function. And by things like microbial metabolites, like neurotransmitters, which would be like serotonin, dopamine, etc. So the gut-brain axis is very important, and it's located in the colon. Immune regulation. So by housing all our microbiome and our bacteria, it helps to modulate immune responses and decreases things like overactive inflammation, etc. And then obviously waste elimination, another reason it's health. Now, ways in which we think about keeping the colon healthy in general. Fiber is a big thing, and this can be debated. Obviously, my husband's done the animal-based diet for a year. He hasn't eaten any vegetable or fruit or what would be considered fiber for a year, and he's been fine. He feels great. He actually ate some berries and some fruit the other day, and he did not feel very good because it was like bloating him off like crazy. But those of us who are eating like this, soluble fiber, insoluble fiber, they help promote regular bowel movements and basically feed the beneficial gut bacteria. And I think this is And I need to look into the research more here. I'm not even going to profess to understand it all, but this is one of the, I would say, objections to the animal-based diet is that there's no food. So what's happening is the microbiome and short-chain fatty acid production and all this kind of stuff. But something for me to look into and possibly do a bonus podcast on for sure. So some ways to keep your colon healthy is to eat a fiber-rich diet, which there's some debate there if you're doing animal-based, but really the soluble fiber and the insoluble fiber help promote regular bowel movements. You keep your colon healthy is obviously stay hydrated, so it doesn't have to work so hard to be pulling water from your stool, etc. Staying hydrated is great. Incorporate probiotics or prebiotics. That can help. Some sources will say limit red meat and processed meats, but I would take that down to limit processed meats. So if you're eating tons of salami and you're eating tons of like processed deli meats, I would decrease those. But like good grass-fed beef and your ruminants and your wild game and all that, if it's not like heavily barbecued, because that can do it too, because that can cause some products in the stomach and in the colon that can cause some of these that basically process the meat more just in general. But all those other high omega-3 fatty good foods, I'm not going to keep that on that list. Exercise regularly, because when you exercise, you can go to the bathroom easier, so you eliminate waste better. The obvious one, avoid smoking and excess alcohol. Colon cancer is a much higher increased risk in smokers and in people who drink alcohol. Again, back to alcohol. What is alcohol doing for you? I like a drink every once in a while. I like a little Bailey's in my coffee maybe, but like alcohol in general is doing you nothing. There's no nutritional value in alcohol. And it causes all these problems we've talked about this week. All right. So that's what the colon does. And so when we talk, if we go back to that big overwhelming thing, what is the microbiome, right? And why is it so important? And why is there so much information now coming out on the microbiome and what it's doing for us? Number one is the nutrient absorption. So your microbiome, your gut bacteria, basically digest fibers, other things like enzymes that they can't, enzymes and stuff that can't do this, those gut bacteria do it. And then they create these short chain fatty acids like butyrate, acetate, propionate, and they nourish gut cells and reduce inflammation. We can test these markers in the stool and we can see how much a person has. And if they have less and they don't have a lot, they're not doing well. The microbiome may not be doing well and they're having more inflammation. It also does, the microbiome helps with, again, those nutrients like vitamin A, B12, folate, biotin, and amino acids. So there is some synthesis of nutrients. The microbiome is big in immune system regulation. It helps to train the immune system, to educate the immune cells, to distinguish between harmful pathogens and harmless things. It's a barrier protection, so healthy gut bacteria maintain the integrity of the gut lining. They prevent leaky gut, the entry of harmful substances into the bloodstream. And then you have the anti-inflammatory effects of those microbes. They modulate inflammation and immune responses. So when it comes to autoimmune disease, which we talked about in the very first part of this series, lots of autoimmune disease going on in our culture. And I think a lot of microbiome destruction. They also help to protect you against pathogens. So they basically crowd out other pathogenic organisms by competing for nutrients and attachment sites in the gut. And if your microbiome is really destroyed, then these other bacteria can come and they can set up house basically and cause problems. And we see this in things like Candida and some of these fungal infections, and you just have loss of some of that beneficial bacteria, and now you've got those others coming in and causing problems. And gut bacteria actually do produce antimicrobial substances that inhibit growth of harmful bacteria. Again, back to the mental health and the gut-brain axis, the gut bacteria synthesize new neurotransmitters like serotonin. Actually, 90% of the body's serotonin is produced in the gut. Very important. Dopamine and GABA, all of these things. So influencing your mood, anxiety, and cognition as well. You do have communication of the gut-brain axis via the vagus nerve, which we talked about in part 3. And the vagus nerve and microbial metabolites, they are directly affecting mental health and neurological function. And then these microbiome also have an impact on your stress and mood. So if you have dysbiosis, you can have more depression, you can have more anxiety, and you can have more stress-related disorders. The microbiome helps your metabolic health. It regulates energy balance. It influences calorie absorption and fat storage. It can impact your weight and your metabolism. It definitely plays into blood sugar control. So healthy microbiome improves insulin sensitivity and helps regulate blood sugar levels, which can reduce, things like type 2 diabetes, etc. Another area that the microbiome is important is in inflammation and chronic disease prevention. These short-chain fatty acids that are produced by the gut bacteria, they lower inflammation throughout the entire body. And then dysbiosis in general is more associated with chronic diseases. So somebody's obese, has cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, inflammatory bowel disease like Crohn's or ulcerative colitis, they tend to have more dysbiosis. Even certain cancers can do that. The microbiome helps with metabolism of toxins and thus detoxification. So they neutralize and metabolize environmental toxins like drugs, everything you're breathing in and taking in. The microbiome is actually helping to metabolize those harmful products by supporting the liver and the kidney, which these are two big organs of elimination. The microbiome plays into the skin. It helps things like acne, eczema, psoriasis. It regulates immune response and inflammation. Reproductive and hormonal health. This is really interesting. So the microbiome participates in the metabolism of hormones like estrogen via the estrobolome, and it can help things throughout your life in creating hormonal balances from conditions like PCOS, etc., all the way through menopause. And a healthy maternal microbiome is really crucial for the proper development of a baby's immune system and their microbiome. And this is because during labor, especially vaginal labor, even cesarean labors now, the physicians are even delivering a baby cesarean. They're taking the mother's vaginal secretions and putting it in the baby's mouth and in the nose and giving that microbiome to the baby if they didn't go through the natural vaginal birth, but that's how we get our microbiome is from our mother. Now, if we want to go to this estrobolome, I think this is really interesting, obviously, because I do tons of women's health. I do a ton of menopause. Women are losing their estrogen. The role that estrogen plays in gut bacteria is very interesting. So the role of the estrobolome in the body is really interesting. This refers to gut bacteria that are basically capable of metabolizing estrogen and other compounds. And then these microbes produce enzymes like one is called like beta glucuronidase. And this influences the circulation of estrogen in the body. So the estrobolome regulates estrogen levels by the amount of free estrogen in the bloodstream. And then it also recycles estrogen. So these gut bacteria can actually reactivate estrogen that's excreted in the bile, allowing it to be reabsorbed into the bloodstream and reused. Now, we talked about bile on day 3, I think. And bile is a way that the body gets rid of waste. And when you have phase 1 and then phase 2 detoxification of estrogen, that is then delivered into the GI tract through bile. And the bile is supposed to eliminate used up estrogens. And this is where we can, in a lot of cases, see estrogen excess. Estrogen production and metabolism is kind of, just to put it really simply, you have 3 estrogens, and they're produced by the ovaries, the fat tissue, adrenal glands, some other sites in the body. And then after fulfilling their physiological function, these estrogens are conjugated and made inactive in the liver, and then they're excreted in the bile. And in the gut, certain bacteria deconjugate estrogen via a beta glucuronidase, so making it active again and available for reabsorption. And so if the gut microbiome is disrupted, or what we call like dysbiosis, this process can be impaired. So this can lead to imbalance such as estrogen dominance or deficiency, just based on this one system and this enzyme system being affected by the gut microbiome, which is really, really interesting. And we see a ton of it today, especially with recycled estrogens. High beta glucuronidase activity, which would be like excessive estrogen recycling that turns on, and then you're just like, you're recycling all that estrogen that's coming through the bile, you get more estrogen dominance. And this is going to be like PMS, endometriosis, fibroids, breast cancers, etc. Now, low beta glucuronidase activity, so you have like reduced estrogen recycling, is going to lead to estrogen deficiency because you can't reactivate any of that estrogen. And so you have symptoms of low estrogen, vaginal dryness, hot flashes, reduced bone density, and then postmenopausal symptoms or exacerbation of menopause related conditions can be worse. Now, obviously, when you go through menopause, you're not making estradiol, and this is a natural process in life. But if you're seeing these symptoms in a younger gal of reproductive years, you do have to consider the gut health and the microbiome. Is she having estrogen deficiency because of this problem of the estrobolome? So postmenopausal women, some women really suffer, and this can be because their microbiome has been altered, and we need to support them there. And then estrogen does regulate fat distribution and metabolism. So when it becomes disrupted, it can exacerbate weight gain and insulin resistance. And this is where we may see in the double whammy of the perimenopausal, menopausal woman, where she's coming in just gaining weight like crazy, and she's either pre-diabetic or becoming diabetic, and she doesn't know what happened. Why all of a sudden, even though, naturally I'm losing my estrogen, why does this woman get it and not another? Could it be that her gut microbiome is messed up? And lastly, last part I'll touch on this is, how does estrogen actually affect the microbiome? Well, that balance of estrogen is also very important for supporting gut barrier function. It maintains intestinal permeability, so it actually reduces the risk of leaky gut and inflammation. Back to the menopausal woman, we see a lot of inflammation. We see a lot of gut issues. We see leaky gut. We see things like, I used to drink a glass of wine every night with dinner. I can't do it anymore. I feel horrible. I get inflamed. This is part of it. It does promote my microbial diversity. So higher estrogen levels are associated with a more diverse and balanced microbiome. Now, not excessive estrogen, right? But higher levels, like higher than like me right now. I'm a postmenopausal woman, right? Like if I take a gal 10 years younger than me, she's going to have more estrogen, and she may have a more diverse and balanced microbiome. And then estrogen modulates the immune response and supports growth of anti-inflammatory microbes. And again, so we could just overall see more inflammation possibly in the middle-age years for women when they're losing their estrogen. And so the gut does need to be supported. This is another example of like, you cannot separate systems in the body. They all work together. So what are ways to help improve this estrogen microbiome balance? Again, prebiotics, fiber, probiotics. So probiotic foods are more like prebiotic foods are feeding the probiotic microbes. So fiber, vegetables, prebiotics would be garlic and onions, these kinds of things. They are going to bind up excess estrogen in the gut and promote elimination. So that's one way to balance things out. Another is the fermented foods encourage a more diverse microbiome. There's things like cruciferous vegetables. They can support estrogen detoxification because they help in that phase 1, phase 2 detoxification of estrogen. Supposedly certain things, lignans like flax seeds, can help estrogen as well. There's a whole thing for reproductive women called seed cycling that can possibly help with estrogen balance. And then exercise. Did you know that regular exercise, it helps regulate estrogen and supports your microbiome? Stress management. Chronic stress disrupts your gut bacteria. And so when you're chronically stressed, your hormonal imbalances are going to be, and your symptoms are worse. It's just how it is. I see it every single day. And how do we get away from stress? How do we change our life? That's the big question. And then obviously avoiding environmental toxins. So minimizing exposure to xenoestrogens like synthetic chemicals, like plastics, personal health phthalates, all of these things, pesticides, herbicides, eating organic, all that kind of stuff. And then any supplements that might help, probiotics, and then calcium D-glucarate, which is actually a supplement that reduces estrogen by estrogen recycling by inhibiting beta glucuronidase. So that's just how estrogen plays into the microbiome. And I thought that was really interesting because I'm probably talking to a lot of men, and I'm also talking to a lot of women, and the men that live with women. You guys also have estrogen. So let's remember, if you're estrogen excess and you're overweight or you're inflamed or you have insulin resistance, you're going to have more estrogen. The more estrogen you have, you could stimulate more of this beta glucuronidase issue. And so men can also have this. This is not just for women. We just have more estrogen, so it can be more extreme for us. But remember, it does apply to you as well. All right, so let's see. So let's do a little bit of talking about the reintroduction phase now and what that looks like. So the core components of this would be to reintroduce the things like probiotics, like I talked about, and possibly the prebiotics. If you're doing fiber, introducing more fiber into your daily needs. And then the other part of this is reintroducing food. Now, we have typically in the gut restoration program or any other elimination diet that you do, you've removed offending foods, and now you've done your 4 to 6 weeks, and you're like, okay, I want to eat these different foods. How do I do this? And how do we reintroduce? Now, number one is you probably know the foods that were causing problems, right? You know the foods that were causing your digestive issue or your skin problem or your fatigue or whatever. You don't have to reintroduce all foods. And honestly, people sometimes feel so good at the end of this program, and they're just like, I don't want to reintroduce foods. How do I do this? Because I don't want to do it. Well, you don't have to. The gut restoration program, like I said, is a nutrient-dense food program. It's not a diet. After a couple of weeks of it, most people feel great. And they're like, why do I need to reintroduce gluten? Why do I need to reintroduce dairy? Well, it can be hard in our day and age, right? Not to do that. And so reintroduction really kind of happens in a systematic way to help us understand, do you actually have a reaction to that food, and what are those reactions? How I like to do it is, number one, I start with like least likely allergen foods or triggers. Now, we do a controlled method, and what this is you introduce one food at a time. You then consume it multiple times during that test period. So you would consume it at breakfast, lunch, and dinner on the first day. And then you don't want to combine any other foods with this. Like, so if you've removed soy, corn, wheat, and oranges, you don't want to reintroduce soy, wheat, and oranges on the same day, because then we have no idea. You're just going to be doing oranges. And then typically what I do is I have you monitor your symptoms, and you're going to be looking for symptoms like digestive symptoms, obviously, skin reactions like hives or acne that pops up, nasal congestion like respiratory symptoms, fatigue, brain fog, joint pain, mood changes, anything like that. And you're going to watch for 72 hours. So you're going to eat the food 3 times in one day, and then for 3 days, you're not going to eat that food again, and you're going to see what happens. And the best way to do this is to keep a journal, because most of us don't pay that close of attention. And then we see what it did. If you're like, oh, I felt pretty good, I did pretty good, I didn't notice anything, great. Then we move on to the next food. Now, the other way you can reintroduce foods is reintroduce the foods you really, really miss first. And that could be, I really miss dairy, so I'm going to add dairy back in. Now, dairy can get confusing because there's lots of different types of dairy. Some people don't do good with cow's milk, but they do fine with yogurt. Some people do goat milk, but they can't do cow milk. So figure out what you like to eat and introduce that food first. And then watch for these 3 days of symptoms during the reintroduction phase. I would say if you do have a reaction, then you need to kind of let that reaction settle before you add another food. And this can be why the reintroduction phase can be so people hate it, because it can take several months sometimes for some people, and you may need help. You may need to get a nutritionist, but truth be told, unless you're very allergenic and you don't know, most people know the foods they're reacting to, and they know the foods they don't feel good when they eat them. So I would say, if you never felt good eating dairy and you really want to add dairy back in, it's probably obvious you're going to have a reaction. We don't know because we've worked 4 to 6 weeks to clean your gut up now. And so you may not. But again, just thinking of it in those terms. Now, let's say we're beyond reintroduction phase and we're eating healthier, but once in a while we eat a little dairy. Once in a while we have like whey protein or something that we know we're going to respond, not do well with, or gluten or whatever. That's how the supplements can be supportive. So the Digest Plus can be supportive because you can take it when you go out to eat. You can take it at holidays, right? Christmas is next week or like week and a half. You could take your digestive enzyme at Christmas, during Christmas Day and a couple days before. Like, it can help support digestion, breaking down gluten, breaking down proteins. And honestly, like, really, it'll help you not eat as much. It really will help you with your appetite, not eating as much. So this is where the supplements can be supportive. And honestly, I've also found with triggering foods and this whole idea of what is healthy eating is moderation is so important. Like, we have access to just so much stuff in this culture. Like, I can go to the grocery store right now in Bozeman, Montana, and pretty much find anything. That is not natural. That is really not natural in the concept of history. So I have access to so many things that I probably wouldn't be eating normally if I was living in my cultural environment in the middle of winter right now. And my digestive capacity may not be great for that. And this is where I honestly also love, when we're reintroducing foods back in, to also think about your body type. And this goes back to the podcast that I did with Dr. Jillian Ehrlich, where she talked about ancient medicine in modern times. And she talked about Ayurvedic medicine from India. This is a great time to think of what is your body type? For example, I am predominantly Vata body type, which means I tend to be thin, skinnier, creative. My brain works a lot. I am very active, and I can have a lot of GI disturbances and hormonal disturbances and brain stuff, when I'm out of balance. And so to keep myself in balance, it's best for me, especially this time of year and where I live, is to be eating warm, nourishing, easily digestible foods. Eating like raw bananas and raw salads and just like veggies and that have no really strong digestive fire is not good for me because I already run cold. So I love my sauna because it gets me warm. I love hot baths because they're hot. So the foods that I'm going to gravitate for are going to be more nutrient dense. And if I'm trying to keep myself in balance and stay healthy, those are the foods that I want to eat. Now, let's say you're a Pitta body type, you're very fiery, you're heat oriented already. You get hives, you get itching, you get whatever. When you're out of balance, you may do better with cooling foods, cucumbers and these kinds of things. You may do better with a salad once in a while, etc. So, I just feel like knowing your body type and who you are in general is really important. And then also the environment that you live in. We live in high, dry, cold most of the year. And it's a harsh environment. It's extreme environment. Honestly, if I had my choice at my age, I wouldn't be living here. I know why old people go south. Because old people time, older, over 50, is like Vata time of life. And so we need more heat, external heat. We don't have good digestive strength, which we've talked about this whole series, is like your acid goes down as you get older. So these things change. And so you got to think about your environment as well and what that looks like. But when we're reintroducing these foods, we kind of want to do it slowly. So either pick your favorite foods that you really miss, reintroduce those, see what happens, see how you feel. Now, if you're just doing the gut restoration because you just want to do a yearly cleanse, you're not doing an elimination diet for any reason like allergies or problems or anything, you can go ahead and just reintroduce foods slowly in. You'll probably realize you don't want to, and it's okay, and you're feeling better. So again, everything in moderation. But I think even just doing this for people that aren't having any of those problems is excellent. It's a great way to kind of reset your digestive tract. All right. Now, to finish this series up, I wanted to talk a little bit about something that is so common in our culture, and it has to do with the microbiome. It's artificial sweeteners. And I bring this up because I've thought about this for years, and being in the health industry, being in the supplement industry, looking at creating drinks and doing all these things that Ryan and I are working on right now. Cross our fingers. We're going to have some drinks by spring. It's only taken us 3 years. But we have to think about a lot when it comes to that. And when it comes to sweeteners, this is a touchy topic. It's a big topic. People are always asking questions about this. And just like when I talked back a few series ago, food colorings, all that kind of stuff, what are the implications of those? I think it's important to talk about artificial sweeteners because they're kind of everywhere nowadays. Now we know cane sugar is sweet and everybody likes cane sugar, but we know over time cane sugar might be causing things like diabetes and metabolic disorder. So the fad was then to start adding all these what are considered low sugar or no sugar sweetener substitutes to help diminish the chance that we would have diabetes. But I think what we're seeing is we may be having actually more of a problem because over time, we're probably destroying our gut microbiome. So let's talk just a little bit about these. Now, the most common artificial sweeteners that have shown research that affect the microbiome, number one is aspartame. So aspartame is a low-calorie sweetener. It's like in sodas, diet soda, sugar-free gum, stuff like that. And it's composed of two amino acids, phenylalanine and aspartic acid, and then those are combined with methanol. And the effects on the microbiome have been interesting because it shows that it doesn't really it's not directly metabolized by gut bacteria, but it indirectly affects the microbiome by altering microbial diversity. And it can increase the relative abundance of bacteria associated with gluten intolerance or inflammation. And this may, in turn, create insulin resistance and metabolic disease in susceptible individuals. So it's not actually increasing your blood sugars, but it's changing your microbiome and making you more insulin resistant. And the other thing is aspartame is a neurotoxin. You should not be drinking this stuff. It's a proven neurotoxin, like excitotoxin is what we call it. But especially children, like young nervous systems, like I do not know why people are still doing aspartame, and I do not know why they're adding it to the food supply. But it's cheap would be my guess. The next one is sucralose. And this is probably the number one we get questions on is sucralose. And for years, because all these health companies and supplement companies have come out, and since the drink industry and the protein industry has gotten huge, and you had all these multi-level marketing companies and people selling all this stuff. I mean, if you go to GNC or wherever you buy your stuff, your protein, pretty much everything is sweetened with sucralose. And the reason for that is sucralose is very cheap and it's super sweet. So it doesn't really take a whole lot to make things sweet. Now, how sucralose is made is it does come from cane sugar and it's a chlorinated sugar molecule. So they add a chlorine to it and the effects on the microbiome are starting to come out more and more. So it decreases beneficial bacteria such as lactobacillus and bifidobacterium. It can increase harmful bacteria like Clostridium difficile, and it does reduce microbial diversity in the gut. So this can lead to gut permeability, so leaky gut, and really probably immune system regulation over the long term and inflammation just because it's causing that gut permeability issue. Now, if you talk to anybody who's a big sucralose like defender, and I probably was one of these 10 years ago, oh no, it doesn't do anything. It doesn't absorb through the gut lining. That's what they'll tell you. It stays in the GI tract and it's not harmful at all. Well, that's not necessarily the case. And I would say also in people that are even more immune compromised or susceptible to this sucralose and causing gut permeability is going to alter the microbiome. The other thing is you don't want to, C. difficile is a big deal. It's like harmful. So if you've got a gut lining that's already trashed from everything else and then you're drinking tons of sucralose, like it's just not helping. And it's in a lot of products that people consume. And I think it's also dose dependent. So if you're drinking 3 protein shakes a day or 2 protein shakes a day, and then you're drinking 3 drinks a day, putting those powders in your drinks, and they've all got sucralose in them, it's like dose dependent, lots of it. And I know people that are doing that, especially like in the bodybuilding world. when I was doing bodybuilding, I mean, you're drinking protein, you're drinking hydration drinks, you're drinking like energy drinks, you're doing tons of these powders, and they're trying to no sugar in these diets, but everybody's eating sucralose things, protein bars with sucralose. Like, it's just kind of rampant. So yeah, I don't think sucralose has been great for the microbiome. A saccharin is like sweet and low. It's one of the really oldest artificial sweeteners, and it does alter gut microbiome conditions. It does favor strains that cause glucose intolerance. And in animal models, saccharin's been linked to reduced microbial diversity and dysbiosis. Again, impairs glucose metabolism and increases your risk of metabolic syndrome. There is one called, I can never say this word, asulfame potassium, which is ACE-K. This is a heat-stable artificial sweetener, so it's used in a lot of baked goods and stuff like that. It can alter the gut microbiome and impact glucose tolerance again. Now, stevia. So I've got these two, stevia and monk fruit. Our products contain stevia. If we've got any powder products currently, they contain stevia. And we do have our drinks and everything will be containing monk fruit. We're kind of transitioning to that because Ryan's on this animal-based diet and we need more of that. Stevia is a plant. And so but stevia is naturally, it's derived from the Stevia rebaudiana plant, and it's less disruptive than the synthetic sweeteners. It may reduce the microbial diversity slightly, but it really has minimal negative effects on the beneficial bacteria. So it's not disrupting those. Now, if you get a really highly processed form, you might see some of that effect on the gut bacteria, but it appears to be neutral, maybe slightly beneficial actually, compared to all these other artificial sweeteners that we talked about. And then monk fruit is a natural calorie-free sweetener from the monk fruit. And it really has limited studies, and maybe studies are going to be coming out 10 years from now showing different evidence, but really has minimal current side effects on gut bacteria. And it's actually it's safer for the microbiome. But again, pending further research. Then there are all these sugar alcohols like xylitol, erythritol, sorbitol, malitol. These are naturally occurring compounds, and they are partially fermented by gut bacteria. And so this can lead to gas, bloating, diarrhea. Xylitol can promote beneficial bacteria like bifidobacterias, but if you take too much xylitol, you get diarrhea. And then erythritol is mostly absorbed in the small intestine, so it really has minimal effects on the microbiome. And these are generally less harmful as well. So especially these are high in ketogenic diets, and people, looks like they're probably not harmful. I would say anything that's chemically produced or altered, like, heavily, is again processed. And again, processed foods are a big problem of our current food supply. So trying to keep it as simple as possible. And honestly, cane sugar is heavily processed. It's always been a heavily processed food. It's very laborious to make, and it's heavily processed. So we are now at the end of this 5-part series, and I hope that you've learned a lot about the 4R's, which would be remove, repair, reintroduce, and restore. Also, I hope you've learned a lot of anatomy and physiology about what your GI tract is doing and why it's so important to your foundational root health. And then also, I hope you maybe consider doing the gut restoration program, maybe after the first of the year, trying it out. And also, maybe this is just giving you some motivation to do those really necessary pillars of health, like eating better whole food diets. Maybe you're even considering starting an animal-based diet or something that's unique for you, but really just eating whole foods, getting exercise, getting sleep, staying away from tons of processed foods, and realizing that we in general as human beings have lived for thousands of years without our food supply being processed at all. Processing has been going on for a long time, but the level at which we're seeing processed food come into our diet supply now and cause disease and disorder is quite alarming. And the only way that will actually change is if people change what they're doing. So your dollar means everything. Your choices at the grocery store mean everything. And the best way to do it and to have control over your food is to do what a lot of you are doing. Procuring your own meat, harvesting your own animals. We were doing animal husbandry, having chickens, having your own eggs, growing a garden, and understanding that the microbiome of the earth and the soil is essential to our microbiome and our overall health. And it's all connected. We are all connected. No matter what the media, no matter what politics, no matter what religion or whatever wants to make you think, we are all reliant on each other. And not only are we reliant on each other, we're reliant on the animals, we're reliant on the soil, we're reliant on the microbes in the soil. All of these things are interconnecting us to nature. And we are part of nature. So the more we try to separate ourselves from nature, the more we try to process our lives and make our lives so just we sit in a room all day, we never go outside, we never get fresh air. Yeah, we can live like that, but over time, it's just we eat a bunch of junk food, we never get nutritious food, we have horrible relationships, we don't sleep at night, we're up on our devices all night, we're being constantly force-fed a bunch of stuff that's just depressing us and then making our mental health horrible. This is not who we are. We are part of nature and we are part of the cycle. And so our bodies are tuned into that. So the more tuned in you get to that, the better things will be. And your GI tract is foundational step number one in order to get all of that in order. All right. So like I said, you can go to the website, download the Gut Restoration Guide. We're probably going to also have a GI Health Labs guide like we did with the Men's Health series. I'll be putting something together on there. You can go download that for free. I'm just always trying to create as much resource for you guys as I can. My next series will likely be for you ladies out there. I'm going to do some female health series, maybe a couple of them, because women at different ages are really different. And so I'm working on that right now. Christmas, like I said, is in a week and a half. And for all of you out there who are believers, and even for those of you who aren't, this is a great time of the year to remember what's important, to be with family, to be good to yourself, and also to rest and to relax and take a break. Life is very stressful. Our world is very stressful. We've had a very hard, this last year has been interesting to say the least, and the last 4 years have been very difficult for most everybody in the world. So please take this time to rest, relax, eat healthy food, get some sleep, and to be with the ones you love, and know that that is really what's most important. All right, everybody. Hope you have a great night. Thanks for listening to this series, and we will see you at the next podcast. Because I am a doctor, and I'm probably not your doctor, this is just a disclaimer. So anything here at Stealthy Hunter, Hunt Harvest Health, or Stealthy Nutrition is not used to prescribe, treat, or diagnose. And any of this information that you take from this podcast, from our website, or any other source related to Stealthy Hunter is for informational purposes only, and you use at your own risk.